And welcome back to the Justin Thurber Show. I'm your host, Justin Thurber, and as always, this is my co-host extraordinaire, Jim. How we doing today, Jim?
Doing good. I just stopped by the polls to vote for myself for the first time ever, so that was exciting.
I got to do that a couple times last year. It's actually pretty cool. Actually, I voted for myself a bunch of times in the past, or Mickey Mouse. Um, but last time it actually meant something. So good luck. Hopefully you win, and we can talk about that on next week's show if you want, and we can tell us what you're doing. This week's actually we have a pretty exciting show. We're going to discuss some newsworthy stories that most people may or may not have missed, and as we usually call it, in case you missed it. And then we're going to discuss government's new way to be involved in your life with the Green New Deal for healthcare. It's crazy. They have a Green New Deal for healthcare. It's nonsensical and sounds as dumb as it is, and we'll be discussing that. And then finally, we're going to take a look at what's going on with student loan forgiveness and Biden's plan to forgive student loans for people that should have made good decisions when looking for colleges and now are saying that everyone else should pay their loans back for their bad decisions. So, without further ado, I don't know if people have been paying attention, but in Florida this week, on May 12th, with the direction of Ron DeSantis, Governor DeSantis, they signed a Big Brother's digital dollar ban. And what that basically is doing is they're trying to get ahead of the central bank digital currency. And Florida's bill will prohibit the use of federally sanctioned CBDC as money within Florida's Uniform Commercial Code, and it bans CBDCs issued by foreign government reserves and central banks, including China's digital yuan or yuan. So, if people don't know what the CBDC is, or central bank digital currency, this is a move by a lot of governments to basically make money electronic. And from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, is what it's gonna be is you'll either have your phone or maybe some app or maybe a watch or something that'll have your identifying information on it. And anytime you make a transaction, the government basically holds all your money and it tracks everything you do. It tells you how much money you have. And obviously they promote this as it's going to be a way to make things easier, to make things safer, and it's going to be the best thing ever. But when you see what's happening in China with how they're restricting people with social credit, their social credit system and their credit scores, and not letting people purchase things, and what some politicians are doing now, even states are doing, what restricting what you can buy and can't buy. I think Ron DeSantis is onto something when he's sitting there like, we don't want to allow the federal government to have control and visibility of everything that its citizens do. So, what do you think?
Yeah, exactly. So, essentially, instead of taking your money and doing a direct deposit into your local bank account, essentially you'll be taking that and depositing it with the Federal Reserve. So you'll have a direct line to the Federal Reserve, and yeah, it'll pretty much be an open communication. So they'll get to see everything that you spend money on. So gone are the days where if you want to go to the liquor store to hide something from your from your wife, and you go to the ATM to get some cash out to pay for something, you won't be able to hide anything. You'll have to pretty much the government will have full transparency into everything you're spending
Well,
money on. So if you
it's
buy some cigarettes, if you go to the tanning salon, they can use that, increase your health insurance like they were trying to do with Obamacare. So it just
yeah.
opens up a whole can of worms.
It's actually funny that you say that because I think this also goes in line with those 87,000 IRS agents, the $600 payments. If you get more paid more than $600, they want to know what those transactions are, and they said we're going to hire these 87,000 agents for billionaires, right? And however, everything they're doing makes it seem like they want to make sure they track everything you're doing. And one of their selling points is, oh, we can stop drug dealers and we can stop people doing illegal things because cash is used for illegal things. Well, yeah, especially Ukraine, right? But we just give it to them no matter what. I really think, and I'm hoping with bills like this that other states will follow suit and people will start realizing that this is no good. I mean, even in the pamphlet that they presented when they signed the bill, it basically lists some of the threats that central bank digital currency has, and some of them are you loss of personal privacy, your economic freedom through government sanctioned surveillance. Right? They know everything you do, everything. Imagine trying to do your taxes now too. I mean, just thought about that. Tax season just finished about a month ago. Imagine that. Like, I'm sure there's things everyone forgets, whether they forget or they legitimately forget. They're gonna know everything. And what if they like, oh, listen, remember you bought that there and did this? And think about it. Like, you're supposedly some states, if you buy items in other states and you didn't pay the tax to your state, they want you to pay the tax on that. No one does that. But with the CBDC, I'm sure as heck they'll be like, hey, listen, Justin, you were in New Hampshire, and New Hampshire's tax free, and you bought that particular item. You owe us tax on that tax money. So this is the thing that I hope there's a big pushback. There needs to be a big pushback, because if we let this gain traction, we're done. And I don't mean that. I don't mean that to be like taken lightly, because it's true. Everything that's going on, what would you lead you to believe that the government wouldn't use this as some way of controlling what you do?
Yeah, just like everything out there, it's eventually they're finding some way to use it to control people, whether it's CBDCs, whether it's the electric vehicles that they can turn off and on the
Yep.
ignition switch. It's like each of these technologies that are coming out, they're looking at it and looking at ways of like, okay, how can we use this to essentially control the population? It's kind of like what media has been doing for
Yeah.
for the last
Well,
few years.
one last thing too is says, well, there's two things. Community financial institution, it threatens, banks would probably go away, so with loss of jobs, but they don't care about jobs. And then access to goods and services by limiting purchases. And that takes us into the next thing that happened this week. I have a nice video from the governor of New York. Let's take a listen.
But we, just like we had to go from long time ago, can transition from coal as your energy source. We do have to transition. There are clean energy alternatives. It's going to take time. And I want to make sure that New Yorkers don't get hit hard for the cost. So we're going to roll this out. But new buildings that are going up, they can go electric, they can do heat pumps. This is high.
All right. So what's happening here is the governor signing a bill that's basically saying all new buildings that are going to be built can't have gas lines in them, because we want to transition away from gas stoves. So again, it used to be conspiracy theory, and now it's turned kind of into reality. What else is going on? Do we know? California started their no gas cars by 2035, and now Massachusetts, and now Rhode Island, and now you can't have a gas stove, and you can't have a gas car, and you can't do this. And you're going to sit there and tell me that if they didn't have this mechanism in place where they could actually stop you from purchasing something, that they wouldn't stop you from purchasing something? And there's always a good reason. I mean, that's the insidious thing about these type of measures they put into place, is there's always a good reason. We're saving the planet. We're doing it for your health. We're doing it for your benefit. No, it's not. We're supposed to be United States of America. We're supposed to be free to make our decisions. If I want to go buy a steak, because this is things that they say is like in the future, they'll limit how much you can eat. Oh, Justin, you need to lose weight, or you've met your steak quota eating this month. We will stop you from buying steak, or we will stop you from buying this type of product. That's not the kind of country that's free. That's not the type of country I want to live in. Why are we allowing politicians to dictate everything that we're able to buy and not buy?
This might be the hill that I die on. So, in Texas they have the cannon on the flag and it says "Come and take it." So I think maybe here in New York they should start putting gas stoves on a flag and with a "Come and take it" logo on it, because yeah, I mean, it's just funny because really this goes into the whole energy conversation, and we've talked about this in the past, but if the goal of trying to help climate, I think is what this is directed at, and it doesn't even help with that. I mean, we've talked about the way to have a robust electric grid or energy sources. You have to have your energy sources have to be diversified.
Yes.
That means you have to have nuclear power. That means you have to have natural gas. That means you have to have oil. That means you have to have electric. And what happens is the more that you put all your eggs in one basket in one energy technology, But guess what? If that energy power goes offline for whatever reason, you're screwed. It's like you have
Well,
no diversification in the energy source, and that's one of the big problems in New England is actually we rely so much on emergency energy at some points during the winter where if we ever ran into a crisis, it would be a huge deal because we're slowly putting all our eggs in one basket in one energy source.
we
And it's
could we
only
could also we could also talk about how a lot of these new high efficiency heat pumps and air conditioning units, in order to get the rebates on them, states what they're doing is saying, hey, you have to get these smart thermostats. And in some states, what they did is they said, hey, listen, if you let us install these smart thermostats, we'll give you these rebates, but you have to allow us to control your temperatures. And in some of the hottest days when the grid can't handle it, what they're doing is that the state's going, yeah, you can deal with 82 degrees in your house.
Do you remember? I think it was last year in Germany. When they were running into their energy problems because they started divesting away from nuclear, which is safe,
Yep.
and they started taking off their nuclear power plants without replacing it. They ran into this big energy crisis last year, and they were pretty much telling residents they can't keep their thermostat above 63 degrees during the day. And I don't know. I just thought that was. I mean, just goes to show you how this effect of banning gas stoves or not really thinking about the energy situation can lead to real decisions on people's lives. The government was literally telling people what temperatures they could set their thermostats to during the days and during the nights.
Well, another thing that you say is government not thinking, and sometimes I say insidious on this show because I think sometimes there is an actual plan afoot. However, I think sometimes our politicians don't sit there and actually think about the long-term effects of their choices and decisions they make. And I think sometimes if you're politically involved or you're a person that actually looks at situations and tries thinking of more than what's presented in front of you, like the long-term effects of certain situations or certain things that are going on in the country, and you sit there and you raise your concerns, and people are like, oh, you just hate people and you just want to kill the environment, and you're like, no, 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 like, can we do more than just look at a problem and say this is the solution, and never see if the solution is a good solution, if it's a long-term solution, if it works. Which leads me to the next thing that happened this week in Chicago. We had the influx because Title 42, I think, ran out, and we had an influx of immigrants into the country. And so what they're doing is they're starting to move them into communities, and we're talking about 250, 500 immigrants. We're not talking the hundreds of thousands and millions that in the last couple of years have come into America. And some of these communities are finally getting exposed to what people have talked about for the last couple of years, saying this is a drain on resources. Like, couldn't you have helped us first? We don't mind helping people, but now you haven't even helped us, and now you want to help these people and give these people more. So let's see what these residents in a suburb of Chicago that voted 97% for Joe Biden in the last election. I would guesstimate. I don't think 97% of these people are going to vote for Joe Biden again. But let's hear what they had to say.
Politically, having over 500 people in our community would completely wipe out any interest we have. Are you aware that there are immigrant
500 people will wipe out our influence. Think they're getting 500 people. Sorry for cutting us off, but that just blows my mind. So
state houses all over this country who are advocating for non-citizen voting in local elections.
So again, I think you and I have talked about this before, maybe not on the show, and I'll finish this video in a second. But he's saying there's state houses all across the United States that want to give non-citizens the right to vote. Why are there millions and millions of people being allowed in here? And then, like Massachusetts, we just gave them licenses that have no identifying information anywhere that they're an immigrant, they're not a resident, they're not a citizen. It's just a license that looks like yours and mine. And then there's state houses across the United States that want to give the right to vote to people who aren't citizens. And I think what's happening is you're starting to see people get what's going on. Let's just finish this up and we can discuss really quick.
What if that happened here? That would change the mindset of what we as a black community need to thrive here in Chicago. That's a concern of ours. This is much bigger than the mayor of Chicago or Chicago Police Department. This is an effort to destroy our neighborhoods and silence our voices even further.
Man, that's powerful. And to me, it's hopeful, right? I think what's happening is we have a lot of people waking up to the fact that we have a lot of politicians, as we discussed before and often, is they want to maintain as much power as possible. They want to stay in power. So what they do is they use our money to come up with programs to buy more votes, or what they think will get them more votes. And I think what's starting to happen is people starting to realize this, and they're starting to say, wait, you haven't solved the roads. We have homeless. We have veterans that are homeless. There's people going hungry. Taxes are getting crazy. Jobs are hard to find. And your solution to this is to invite more people in that we're going to spend more money on. Understand, it's not all about money, but I think what people always would say is charity begins at home. We have to figure out, and we have to get our house in order before we start trying to help other people out. So I'm hopeful that in the next election, a lot of these people are gonna, when this stuff comes to their doorstep, because they didn't have to deal with this before, they thought it was other people's problems, but now that they're dealing with this, I hope they make their politicians pay.
Yeah, and it is like deja vu, because this has been going on for a long time. I remember in Lynn a few years ago, it must have been, I don't know, 2014 or 2013. They were shipping busloads of migrants to Lynn, and then some of the local city committees had spoken up saying that they don't have the budget and that this is putting a lot of pressure on their social services. And the fact that they're doing all this stuff under the radar tells you everything that you need to know. It's not like they're like putting this stuff out in the public. Oh, hey, we're moving this bus. Like, come, welcome. Let's celebrate, and let's welcome everybody. It's like they're doing all this stuff in the middle of the night. I just, even talking to people around here, I've seen people have talked about that they've seen like these buses even coming into Massachusetts in like the middle of the night, and on the highways and stuff. And it's just like, we talked about the local story in Taunton that's now apparently accepting migrants as well. So it's just, all this stuff is being done, in the middle of darkness, in the middle of the night. And it's just like, obviously, if it was something that they were proud of, that they would be doing this stuff transparently, and publishing what's actually going on.
Well, last week's episode too, we discussed how the United States is the largest human trafficking organization in the world, and like you said, it's representative of a lot of issues that go on in our country. Is a lot of it happens in the dark, and there's a reason why it happens in the dark, because they don't want people knowing what's going on. So the transparency, or the loss of transparency that we have over government, that has to change, and I think citizens have to start demanding that. So that kind of gets me to our next thing that happened this week. They voted on some sort of rushed bill that had E-Verify in it. And Rep. Tom Massey, I love Rep. Tom Massey. People follow him on Twitter. If you can, he's actually pretty good. He actually had a tweet out there, and then I'll follow up with a video and we can discuss this. But in his tweet, he said, if you give the federal government more power, they will weaponize it. Biden showed this when he used OSHA to make employers force their employees to get vaccinated. In the pandemic, the national E-Verify system could easily become a national V-Verify program. So what happened is, when they signed this legislation, there's E-Verify in it. And what they're saying is like, oh, if we implement this E-Verify for employment, we can verify who's here legally and not legally. And then what we can do is we can, get them out. And that's the sale, right? They're going to sell you on that. Well, the problem with it is that's probably not how it's going to work. And it's funny. There's already, as the video will show, there's already a carve out in there, and the carve out is for people that work agriculture. And the funny thing to me about that is that's what they always say, right? When these immigrants come over here, hey, they're gonna do the jobs that American citizens don't want to do. And that's a whole other discussion we can have some other time, that we're having people come here and pay them low wages to do jobs that we don't want to do. That kind of sounds like something that, I don't know, a couple hundred years ago we had in our history that a lot of people complain about. But that's a topic for another day. But let's listen to this video, and we can discuss it. And then what I would really like to do is, it's kind of funny, when I was going through these stories and I was putting them up for this week, I didn't really think about it too much. And then when I was, going through how we were going to run this thing, I realized that there's a common thread to all this, and I want to tie that into a nice bow when we're done. So here you go.
The House today passing the Secure the Border Act, which would resume border wall construction and reinstate Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. But of course, it's the federal government. It's not a perfect fix. 2 Republicans voted against the bill. The major reason being the proposed national E-Verify system. If you've read about that, you know how incredibly problematic it can be. It requires employers to check workers' citizenship status. My next guest says this would give the federal government way too much power over your privacy and private business, even if you're here working legally. So why is a national E-Verify system a threat to your personal freedom? Joining me now to discuss with all the answers, Kentucky Republican Congressman Thomas Massie. All right, let's get sassy with this, because you're absolutely right about E-Verify, and I'm curious why a lot of Republicans think that this is the great Band-Aid.
How did Joe Biden force millions of people to get vaccinated? Through their employment. That was his enforcement mechanism. He took a bureaucracy that already existed, which was OSHA, and said, we're going to use OSHA to make sure that employers force their employees to get vaccinated. So maybe we shouldn't call this E-Verify. In the next pandemic, it may become V-Verify.
Yes, absolutely. And frankly, I'm surprised that Republicans who've talked about limiting the power of the federal government, and the ones who were up in arms about the vaccine mandates, especially the ones that were foisted on employers with more than 100 workers.
They did amend it to indicate to the people who were nervous about the supply of ag labor, yes, to ameliorate their concerns. They added an amendment at the last second yesterday that said, well, when we enforce this, we really need to look at whether it should apply to ag workers or not. So they're basically signaling that this wouldn't apply to ag workers. And like you said, there's basically what this would do, in addition to giving the federal government too much power, is it would raise the price of fake credentials. Because in the states that have tried this, that's what's happened. People still get a fake birth certificate and a social security number and go to work. Speaking of American, this turns the American promise upside down. You are guilty, Kennedy, until proven innocent under E-Verify. You have to prove you're not an illegal alien to get a job after this passes in all 50 states.
The House today passing the Secure the Border Act.
And that's the thing is, I think if you follow Tom Massie on Twitter or Facebook, follow him somewhere, because he's very prescient on a lot of issues going forward. He's always looking not at what's right in front of them, but he's looking at what the solutions are that are being proposed and what their potential long-term effects can be. And like I said, he just sits there and blows your mind that what you're going to do is you're going to create a system that's to verify the legality of people that are here illegally, who most are going to go into agriculture, but they have a carve out for it. And then what's really going to happen is that if you're an American citizen, every time you go for a job now, they're going to have to verify you. It's just...
What's interesting about this, too, if you rewind the clock about 10 years ago, I think E-Verify was probably one of the biggest things that the Republicans at the federal level were pushing for. I remember this being like a big thing during Mitt Romney was campaigning, and obviously immigration was still a big issue then. So it's just kind of funny how it's kind of transformed. But I think the difference is that when E-Verify is talked about, it's like there's a difference between it being at a local level and being a national database, where
yes,
if it's instituted at the local level, where if employer, for example, just is able to run a check on someone at the local level and like see their immigration status versus like if there's a national database in terms of you know of people. And I guess I don't know if I fully understand the difference there too, because like you're going to have a database of some sort in order to check if people are illegal or not. So it's kind of funny how it seems like it's been used as like a wedge, and then all of a sudden now it's this gateway to kind of create this, like you said, the V-Verify of vaccine database or whatever you want to, whatever the next crisis is to track whether you're in compliance with it or not.
Yeah. So now I got that song stuck in my head. I feel like a number, right? Because that's all we're turning into. We're turning into just numbers. One of the things I said, how I'm going to put this nice common thread through all this, and as I was sitting here putting this together, this show, I realized we start off with central bank digital currency. We go to a government that's telling you what you can and can't buy or what you can and can't put in your house. We're talking about immigrants that come here. So there's a problem. The government, again, is always creating solutions to the problems that they make. And somehow those solutions always seem to take more of your rights away, right? So we have this immigrant problem. Now people are clamoring, oh, you can't do this. So, oh, we have the solution. And the solution is to have a program that has a database that will verify that you can work in the United States. I mean, how can that go wrong? Oh, Justin, you can't work. You can't use your cash because it's CBDC. You can't have this stove. You can't buy a gas car. You're just a really bad person, and you don't have the right political views. So we're gonna lock you out of all this stuff. That would never happen.
And guess what? We somehow the police got defunded, and all this violent crime started surging. And guess what? We're gonna solve your problem of violent crime. So we're gonna do you a favor and take all the guns out of society, so you don't have to worry about the violent crime that I don't know how it got created, but it just miraculously showed up recently over the last few years.
Again, you create the problem and give the solution that you want to give. So, all right. So the last thing that happened this week, and it was funny because I do research on a bunch of different topics because I try keeping it fresh. I try getting a lot of different things that maybe people have seen and haven't seen. And I know a lot of people don't follow Ed Markey, the Massachusetts Senator's Facebook page, but I stumbled across this beauty. And all it says is we need a $17 minimum wage. And I laugh so hard because Massachusetts, because obviously he's federal, Massachusetts is talking about a $20 minimum wage. And we did an episode on that. I think it was either April 12th or 19th, if people want to go back and listen to it. And I'm just going to really quick, we're going to get through this one really quick, is just say that I don't want to say stupidity, the stupidity of this and what people have to understand. And what I really need people to do is get this out when they talk to people and people talk about minimum wage, say your minimum wage people will always be your poor. There is no amount of money you can raise the minimum wage to that they won't be your poorest people. And the only reason why, like I said, you and I discussed this ad nauseum. The only reason why politicians want to raise the minimum wage is they collect more taxes. They don't care about the elderly, the people on fixed income that can't deal with the price appreciation that will happen because of this. They don't care about how things get more expensive. And what they'll do is they'll blame your employer for being cheap and not wanting to pay you more. They'll blame the computerized terminals that you have to go to the store and deal with now, and no more personal interaction with people there. They'll blame that on greedy stores. All the while, businesses are trying to stay in business, and these people keep raising the cost of doing business because they want to get more taxes, and this is an easy way of them to do it.
What's crazy to me about this one is you can see the real world impact just going from state to state.
Yeah.
So I went to Florida recently, and I went to this nice Cuban restaurant. And inside the Cuban restaurant, there must have been at least 20 people there working in the restaurant. And they're able to do that because the minimum wage laws in Florida aren't that high. But here you had people, the experience of the restaurant was a lot better. You had like people literally like waiting on you, refilling your drink every few minutes. You know, and you had people like, you know, they were busting their tail and they were learning, you know, on the job, and all those people can take that experience, and whether they want to start another restaurant later down the road, they were having fun. You know, it was just like a great environment. You know, just like a great experience from what I could tell. And, you know, fast forward to come back to Massachusetts, I go to a local fast food shop, and you have like a machine spitting out a ticket at you. And I'm like, is this just like, can we just fast forward to the point where we're just getting fed by machines, and like, you know,
No.
the employee is cut out completely?
How about we fast forward to politicians that are fiscally responsible and understand that their decisions have long-term consequences, and you just can't keep spending other people's monies to keep yourself in power. So here's the other thing on Ed Markey's Facebook thing, and it was a shock to me. We now have something called the Green New Deal for Health. Oh my gosh.
What could go wrong? It sounds wonderful.
Listen, what could possibly go wrong? I think, and I'm gonna tell you what, there's more than the Green New Deal for Health. They have like 10 Green New Deals now or whatever, and all they are is a wish list of programs that obviously is just for government overreach under the guise of, you know, helping, you know, less fortunate communities or helping the planet. They don't care one iota about it. What this does is it allows them to get their tentacles in every facet of everything in society so they can control it. So let's read some of the pages of this beauteous program, because it's actually, you can go to the website, you can find the Green New Deal for Health, and they actually have a pamphlet, and I will read it. We are facing intersecting climate and health crises brought on by big oil and big corporations. Wait, I thought this was about health. Right? That are more concerned with their bottom line than our health and safety. But there is still hope. 4 years ago, we introduced the Green New Deal, a plan to take on the climate crisis and secure a just and livable future for all. 4 years later, we've seen a movement blossomed behind it. And while there is still more work to do, last year's historic climate action gives us proof: when we fight, we win. And we're going to fight. Right now, frontline communities are already suffering the impacts of climate change. A pandemic has laid bare the severity of inequality, and our healthcare system is stretched to the brink. My gosh, so they give this guy like a writing award, right? We must empower all people working in our healthcare systems with the resources they need now before it's too late. That is why we need the Green New Deal for Health, a whole of government, whole of health approach to the urgent crisis facing our nation. Now, this is 2 pages into this thing, and like, it scares the heck out of me, because we just, like they said, there was a pandemic. We just went through the pandemic, and if anything that taught us is keep government the heck out of hospitals. They screwed hospitals so bad. They screwed people so bad. They got in between the doctor and the patient. Not only did they get in between the doctor and patient, they forced hospitals to do things that were against the Hippocratic Oath. And there was doctors afraid of losing their licenses, because if I don't follow what the government says, I'm gonna be unlicensed and I can't help anybody.
What's interesting to me is there's no real details in there. It's like, oh, we need to increase spending, or we need to do this. But
let me read some more. I got some more. We can talk. Oh,
it kind of reminds me of you know, when you're in high school and people are running for class president, and you have those kids that are like, oh, I promised free recess at every single opportunity, or like, you know, they have all these kind of fake promises that they want. This kind of has a little bit of flavor of that.
The problem is these aren't fake promises. These are things that they're trying to sell to people so they can infiltrate and, like I said, put their tentacles in every facet of everything, so they can flip the levers and control the levers to then, like I said, you have a CBDC and you have an E-Verify system, and you don't have the right views. Oh, Justin, you're not going to be able to get that medical coverage you want because you're problematic. So let's read a little more. We will build healthy communities by investing in community health centers to make sure all Americans have access to high quality, dignified care. establishing a public accountability process to ensure communities can still get access to care when hospitals close or reduce services, strengthening community mental health to combat the taxing psychological and emotional toll of extreme weather disasters. Oh my, that was such a toll. Oh my gosh, it just anything, right? Anything just to get people to do something. Providing funding to protect people from extreme heat in order to reduce heat-related illness and death, including solar batteries, heat pumps, and other resiliency measures as eligible Medicare expenses so people with disabilities can install life-saving resilient home infrastructure. Hey, can my Medicare pay for my solar panels? Yes, it can.
You have
And the-
Biden panels.
the Biden panels. And again, here's the thing about it. We laugh and they don't care. That's the big problem everyone has to understand. They don't care. They're gonna try pushing this as much as they can. Push, push, push. So let's go on a little bit more. There's only a couple more pages and it's just ridiculous. It says we will support healthcare workers by growing the community health workforce and empowering healthcare workers like doctors, nurses, midwives, and others to help build healthy careers and healthy communities over the next decade. I have a problem with this. I'll get back to this in a second. Protecting healthcare workers from union busting and prioritizing grants to facilities that collectively bargain with their workers. Oh, we got to talk about this. We got to talk about these two really quick. Okay, so the first one, growing the community health workforce by empowering healthcare workers like doctors, nurses, and midwives. If anything happened in the last 2 or 3 years, I hope what people realize is they did the total opposite of this. The total opposite of this. I don't know how many nurses, how many people I've talked to that worked in that industry who said the only thing that happened was government got in the way, and so many people have left, so many people were fired because the government got in the way. And now what they want to do, we want to grow a workforce. How about you don't fire half the workforce? You don't fire a bunch of people that signed up to protect people, to help people out, have a Hippocratic oath, and they're sitting there saying, I'm trying to save these people. And the government's like, well, yes, you can't give them that medication, though. And like, it'll save them. Yes, you can't give it to them. Or we'll fire you. Then fire me. Okay, you're fired. Boom. But we want to grow these. And then, right, here's what they do. We're gonna protect healthcare from union busting. We're gonna give money to help build unions. And I'm not against unions, but that seems to go one political party's direction, right?
Dare I say it? Look at what teachers' unions has done to the teaching industry.
And you know what? I kind of probably do maybe wish there was a little bit some sort of stronger union or backbone. The problem is I would like a union that was detached from all politics. I would really love a union like that, because what would happen is if the union was aligned with a certain party and the certain party is like, hey, we want to do this, and the union comes down and is like, hey, listen, we're going to do this, and the people in their union like, well, that kind of goes against what we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to take care of people, and you're basically saying you're putting profits over people, and like, yeah, but we're your union and you don't want to fight us. And that's, I don't mind the unions, but we need to separate them from politics. And this doesn't do it, because this is how they're going to use your tax dollars to fund initiatives to keep them in power. And we have to stop doing that. So let's read on a little bit more.
Look at ballot question 1. It was the number one funding for ballot question 1 was the SEIU. It's the employers union. So it just, they just get used and abused for political purposes.
Okay,
really.
so really quick, we're getting back into the thing. Remember, this is about healthcare. So let me read the next paragraph. Investing in climate and health education. Whoa. Climate and health education and training grants to make sure all healthcare workers have the knowledge and skills they need to protect our health from the impacts of the climate crisis. Oh my gosh. Oh. Establishing grants to secure hazard pay for essential workers that care for us not only after climate disasters, but during. You know, like I said, I think what they're starting to do, and it is kind of smart. Like if you're a political person, I'm not gonna, you know, poo-poo what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring all these things together to give legitimacy to spending all this money, right? Yes, does climate affect people's health in some aspects? Yes, but they're gonna go way overboard on this stuff, and I don't think what we should be doing is well. Let me put it to you this way, Jim, because this just thought just popped into my head. You and I were both in the military, and you know I was in a little longer than you. And when I first got there, we had certain training, and then what happened is they're like, "Oh, you have this training, and now you need this training, and now you need this training, and now you need this training," and it had nothing to do with your job, had nothing to do with you being in the military. But what it had to do is some politician with a special interest or hair across their butt sitting there being like, I want to force them to learn about this. And all it does is it takes away time from you doing your job. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to say, hey, listen, everything you do, we're going to put this other thing that you have to think about, or we're going to teach you about all these other things that really aren't going to help you be better and more efficient at your job.
I do have to appreciate the bow they're able to wrap around this thing, but it couldn't come at a more like comical time, because as you know, this week there's the talks with the debt ceiling going on. So it's like, what money, you know, where is this money going to come from? So we already don't have enough money to pay the bills that we're currently spending on. And all this is going to do is add more pressure to that. And it's like, at what point does everything just like, I mean,
Jim, how dare you? It's not all about money. We have 10 years left. And I said that 10 years ago, but now this time it's 10 years left.
Yeah, it's like every 5 years there's a new climate study that the world's going to end in 5 years.
Yeah.
And
It hasn't happened yet. So, all right, let's get to the next slide. All right, we will secure a green and resilient healthcare system by reviving a New Deal era program to build, modernize, weatherize zero-emission health facilities to ensure people can access healthcare before, during, and after crises. Oh my gosh. Providing planning grants to engage community members to ensure modernization investments serve real community needs. They want to invest in research into the solutions to the climate health crisis so that we can educate and innovate. And mobilizing federal agencies for a whole of government approach to protect our health and our planet by decarbonizing the health sector. Now, again, all right. So that first one is something we've talked about. Like, we want to modernize, weatherize, zero emission health facilities. So what does that mean? It means we're going to put probably some solar panels. We're going to put some wind turbines up. We're going to have some batteries in some place. And then when a hurricane happens, because you know the Green New Deal, and this is all weatherization stuff, when a hurricane happens and you lose power lines and solar panels are blown off your roof and it's cloudy and you don't have gas because you remove gas and nuclear, your facility isn't going to be running. And these people won't care because they're going to design just like the governor of New York. Like, we don't want this stuff anymore. We don't want gas. We don't want nuclear. All we want is this green energy that isn't 100%. It's not going to solve all the problem. As you said earlier, we need a mix of things. These people don't care about the mix of things. The only thing that matters to them is the end goal and achieving the end goal, and everything else be damned.
meanwhile, guess what they're building straight into Washington, D.C. right now? A huge natural gas pipeline.
Oh, good. Well, you're gonna need it. So, all right. So here's the last.
My point is that they don't care about this stuff for them. You know, it's like they're okay with going with the cheap, affordable energy, and that's reliable. But you are going to be the ones that are stuck with all this stuff that ends up failing, and you're the one that's going to suffer from this. But meanwhile, they're going to be, just like John Kerry. He parrots the climate narrative, and everyone else has to stop traveling and has to stop using gas. But it's okay that he flies across the world in his private jet and pollutes across the world on his way there.
Yes. All right, so we have one more page of this, and again, this, like I said, they wrap it up, and it's a horrible wrap up. And I'd love just to sit here and have a discussion with these people because it's nonsensical. All right, it says the Green New Deal for Health boldly reimagines our healthcare system, bringing together the principles of the Green New Deal, good paying jobs, justice for all, and a livable future to create a healthcare system that people deserve, a healthcare system that prioritizes people, not profits, and a healthcare system where everyone doesn't just survive, they thrive. For climate justice, for worker justice, for health justice, we will pass a Green New Deal for health. So this aggravates me. A healthcare system that prioritizes people, not profits. If you believe that, you've been asleep for the last 2 years, right? The only thing that was prioritized in the last 2 years was profits. And I think most people I talk to about this know that. They sit there, everyone knows, like, hey, listen, hospitals were paid this much more for this, and hospitals were paid this much more for that. And you know what? The government said, don't go to get your cancer diagnosis check, or if you're feeling something, don't go to the hospital. How many people did they say died in the last 2 years because they didn't have access to medical care because they weren't allowed to go there? What were they prioritizing? They were, I know what they're prioritizing. Like, hey, listen, if you come in for this, we make more money for that. If you come in for this, we
Oh,
don't
yeah.
make as much money, so don't come in for this.
Yeah, and
It's crazy.
the VA is probably most notably the worst run healthcare, one of the worst healthcare options out there, and that's has a huge government footprint. I mean, you talk about a lot of the major stories that have come out, and it's mostly with the VA. It's how much influence the government has in the VA, and so it's pretty much just like the VA on steroids across for everybody,
Yeah.
which isn't a good solution.
So I got one other thing. So what I did is I typed in the Green New Deal for health, and I actually on April 20th, 2023, kind of missed this. Like I said, sometimes when you're doing your research, we find things, and so it's kind of recent, but about a month ago that this information came out, and there's an actual PDF. I will put the PDF link in the comments below section, or you could just Google search the Markey and Ocasio-Cortez reintroduced Green New Deal resolution. Just Google search that, and it'll come up with a PDF. But I found this very, very interesting part of it. And again, because I didn't know about the Green New Deal for health, right? And there's a part that says the Green New Deal for health is one of 10 Green New Deal bills that have been developed to date. Others include the Green New Deal for public housing, the Green New Deal for cities, the Green New Deal for public schools, and the Civilian Climate Corps for Jobs and Justice Act. We gotta wake up. we, we, I like.
At this point, you're gonna have a harder time finding things that haven't had the Green New Deal slapped onto them than you are that have.
And again, I think that was my point with this, and because again, I kind of researched some of this stuff before.
Green New Deal for elections.
Yeah, I've seen some of this before, and what they want to do is they want to get their grubby hands into everything. So again, like really quick, the Green New Deal for public schools, the federal government has no right to be in public schools. The Department of Education probably should be defunded. The public school system is supposed to be set up that your towns are what funds the public schools. And one of the biggest misconceptions that we have all the time is that the federal government education spending is nothing. They spend so much on the military. They need to spend more on education. I go, no, dipstick, that's not how it was set up. Your house taxes are supposed to pay for your school system. And your house taxes are in your town. That's why you have a school committee, and that's how it's supposed to work. And then the state also will put in money or whatever if a school system's hurting for cash or whatever. The federal government's not supposed to have a say. But again, if we have a Green New Deal for this, for healthcare, and if we have a Green New Deal for this, Let's have a Green New Deal for the NFL or sports. That's what they should have because they're getting political too. And politics makes everything worse. We need to tell politicians back up, fix the streets. When you can start fixing things, when you can start taking care of things, when you can start doing things that you're elected to do and you do them well and responsibly and fiscally responsible and you're honest and upfront and transparent, maybe then I would be like, yeah, you're doing a great job. Why don't you try helping out over here too? But you can't even do the simple things right. And what you do is like, oh, we fixed this problem because we threw money at it. It's not fixed, but we're gonna go fix this other problem now while this one just sits here and dies and withers and sucks.
I like how you brought up the point between the local and the federal stuff too, because at least with the local stuff, that's like kind of going directly to what it's used for, and like you have a little bit more insight into that. All the stuff that gets sucked up into the federal and the state buckets, it's like gets sucked up at like the Department of Education, and then it gets like repurposed into a grant that goes to the state, and then the state has their own grant department and like wraps it up and sends it back to the local town. So it's like by the time it actually makes its way back around to the community that the tax dollars actually came from, it's taken like a 60% haircut, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, why do we even do this
It's
budget jujitsu? And let's just, not tax people as much and
Yes.
just plug whatever is needed into the local economy. And like, it doesn't have to go through all these, other forms of
well,
manipulation, money
I
laundering.
know we're veering off course a little bit, but like sometimes, like I said, you say things and spur something in my head. So you just said about this grant. So last night in our town, we had a town meeting and they wanted to hire a grant writer and they were going to vote on it. But the Board of Selectmen was like, well, we want to educate you on why a grant writer was going to be good. So we're going to table this for now and reintroduce this after we educate you because we think you people should be educated that this grant writer will be able to get money for the town and it's not going to be your taxes. It's not going to be any new taxes to you. And I sat there and I'm like, oh my gosh, did this guy just say that? Where does this grant money come from?
Right.
Oh, it didn't come from my taxes. It came from his taxes. Taxes are taxes. You might as well just take all your money, throw it in the pool, and then just divvy it out whichever way you want and whatever percentage you want. At some point in time, it's your taxes. Your taxes have to pay for something. And these people want to sell it like, hey, listen, we can get a grant writer. And like I told my wife, because my wife is there, I'm like, all right, let's say we get a grant writer. Can they tell us if we get a grant writer and the grant writer's writing grants for the schools and the town and all this other stuff, do our taxes go down? Because if they're bringing in money, our
Right.
money, our tax money, shouldn't our taxes go down? Oh, they're not going to go down. We're just going to get more things
Right.
with your money. And the thing with grants is they always, not all of them, but a lot of them have those poison pills, right? If you accept this money after these terms or after these conditions are met, you are going to have to do this for us, right? It kind of like the federal government wanted paid for a bunch of public school teachers, which they never should have done, and every town that accepted the teachers for the year or two that the federal government paid for them, they had to hold on to those and retain those teachers for so many years afterwards. So hey, this town couldn't afford this teacher. We're going to pay you for a couple of years, and then after that, by law, you're going to have to retain them longer, and you couldn't afford it in the first place. So again, it just, we got to do better, people. We have to pay more attention. We have to do something. That's one of the biggest things we say is no longer can we sit by and just let our politicians under the cloak of darkness, under the secrecy that they use, or just because we're too busy doing, living our lives, just to let them get away with stuff, because this is what's happening. This is if everything we talked about today, if you can't understand that they have a plan, the plan is eventually to be in everything and then to control you so they can have, I don't know if you want to call it absolute power, but almost all power and control over you. I don't know. I don't think I'm overreacting. I just think you're seeing that we have politicians that no longer do what they're supposed to do. That's represent. the people. What they're doing is whatever the party wants them to do, whatever they need to do, whatever structures they need to build to stay in power, they're building that now. And if we fall asleep at the wheel and we don't push back and we don't say something, pretty soon we're not going to have a say.
Yeah, and I think the bottom line is none of this is sustainable. It's like all this stuff, it just grows and grows. It's like college admission fees, you know. It's like they get the unlimited funding. All of a sudden, there's a new athletic field. All of a sudden, there's this new other science project. And the government it acts the same way. It's just it gets added onto the debt, and eventually the whole thing comes crashing down. And you know, when we get to that point, I don't know, but when we do, it's not going to be a pretty sight.
All right, so like I said, we're going to talk about loan forgiveness. I just wanted to go through loan forgiveness really quick. I have just a quick video. It was actually last year because loan forgiveness, Biden had a waiver for it, and the waiver kind of ended in October. But again, they're still trying to figure out a way to keep it going. And I just wanted to play this quick. We can talk about it really quick because there's some things I hope other people catch it, because there was just some things that I'm like, and again, I'll probably pause it and let people know, but it was just crazy to watch this video. And again, to know that there's people out there that feel entitled to their bad decision. So here we go.
With all the attention on loan forgiveness these days, there's another angle on this subject. The Biden administration last year announced a waiver to make it easier for public service employees, such as teachers, firefighters, and nonprofit workers, to receive student loan forgiveness.
Nearly 9 million Americans could be eligible, but the application process is difficult, and the waiver is set to expire very soon on October 31st. Our Karen Travers spoke to some people going through it. Take a look.
Megan Hollis is a
primary care doctor.
community health center in Washington, D.C.
The big reason that I chose to come and work here was just the values and the mission-driven nature of what we do.
A graduate of Georgetown University and its medical school, by the time she started her residency, Hollis had racked up an incredible amount of student debt.
It's hundreds of thousands, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, a medical doctor, so kind of pretty smart. And again, I know this is the best thing I love about these stories is it kind of shows you, and I tell people, I go, I don't care what degree you have, I don't care how many degrees you have, no one knows everything. We have a super smart lady, she became a doctor, and she's really not good with finances or understanding how finances work. So it's just one of those things to think about. Let's listen a little more.
A daunting repayment journey, Hollis learned about a federal program called Public Service Loan Forgiveness, or PSLF.
The only way for me personally I was able to even consider a job in community health was because of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program.
PSLF allows people who work in public sector jobs, such as government employees, nonprofit workers, and teachers, to apply to have their federal loans forgiven after 10 years of consistent payments. Estimates show that over 9 million Americans could be eligible for student loan forgiveness under this program. The Biden administration implementing a waiver in 2021 to loosen some eligibility requirements. It wasn't until this waiver was put in place that Twyla Carter, attorney-in-chief at the Legal Aid Society in New York, was eligible for federal loan forgiveness. But Carter still described a tricky process to finally get the relief she was entitled to.
You don't hear anything, and then you do. And, if your forms are wrong or if something's missing along the way, you don't know about it until months later, et cetera. So it's a really stressful process.
We spoke to people.
Okay, I'm going to replay this for people because when I watched this the first time, I'm like, I didn't just hear that. Did I just hear that? And if you didn't, I'm going to play it one more time. Listen real close. And let's see if you pick up what I picked up on. Here we go.
This waiver was put in place that Twyla Carter, attorney-in-chief at the Legal Aid Society in New York, was eligible for federal loan forgiveness. But Carter still described a tricky process to finally get the relief she was entitled to.
You don't hear anything, and then you do. And, if your forms are wrong or if something's missing along the way, you don't know about it until months later, et cetera. So it's a really stressful process.
We spoke to people.
Okay, so that's Twyla Carter. So she's with the Legal Aid Society. And I'll put this slide up later because I went and researched it. And now it's a 501 or 503C. So they have to fill out a Form 990 with the IRS. And the last one they had that I could find was 2019, and she wasn't on that particular one. And that Form 990, any executives or people that get paid a lot of money, their pay has to be on there. She is a lawyer. She's the chief executive officer of the Legal Aid Society in New York City. From my estimates, based on what they paid that last position, probably makes $280,000. And as you hear the announcer or the narrator on this video, she was finally given the money she was entitled to. Now, I thought this student loan forgiveness would be for people that need it, not someone making $280,000, not a doctor, not a chief executive, not a lawyer. So this is getting abused. And like I said, I'll post the link, and I'll post a picture when we're done listening to this, and just to prove that this company is probably paying her $280,000 to $300,000 a year, and in that person's mind, I needed to have my law degree loans paid off because I was entitled to it.
People across the country who have applied for relief under this program to hear how it impacted their careers and financial decisions. For many workers, it means finally being able to buy a house or put money away for their kids' own college education, or just get a little bit of financial breathing room. Christy Saucedo has worked in education for more than 20 years. A special education teacher, Saucedo has applied for debt forgiveness in the past, but it wasn't until the Biden waiver was put in place that she saw a zero balance on her student loans.
I reapplied and I didn't hold my breath because I'm very pessimistic. When I went on the website, it said balance owed zero. And I couldn't believe it.
English as a second language teacher Andrew Reed has also worked in public schools for more than 2 decades. He now works 2 jobs so he can put extra money in his son's college fund while also making his monthly student loan payments.
My wife and I are going to be paying make these loan payments well and after we retire. And that's just the reality of the situation.
This is the other thing I don't like about these videos when they put these sob stories on there, is they don't tell you where these people went to college. They don't tell you how much they owe or how much they owed, if they got into some other financial trouble or whatever. But I couldn't imagine 20 years ago, because he's been paying for 2 decades, right? Colleges weren't as expensive as everyone is saying now. What college did you go to? And it's funny because I know a lot of people that want to go to school to be teachers, and they go to these ultra expensive colleges, and I'm like, you can go to a state college and become a teacher. That's probably the smartest return on investment, because everyone knows teachers start out not making a lot of money, and depending on a state, sometimes you can make really good money. But when is the responsibility going to be on the person that's making these decisions? And understandably, you got an 18-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid. It's on the parents. And if you're just bad with that, I don't know what to tell you. I don't agree with Elizabeth Warren on a lot of things, but because she's obviously for student loan forgiveness. But years ago, she had this great idea on credit cards that credit cards had to show that if you made the minimum payment, how long it would take you to pay off your balance and how much more you would pay. Well, how come there's no appetite from politicians to say, hey, colleges, anytime a child or a kid applies, right, you have to say, what degree do you want? Or you can have a list of the degrees and say, this is the average salaries you can estimate that you make, and this is how much the school costs, and this is how much the school's going to cost you, and this is your potential loan. This is all easy. It's simple math. And it will be $800 a month for 30 years. That's what you're looking at. And then, what people can do is be like, yeah, I don't want to do that.
And show them the potential taxes they're going to pay too, because that's an important part of the equation. I think most people, especially kids when they graduate college, you graduate, you get this nice fancy job offer, you think you're going to be making all this money. You look at that first paycheck and you're like, where did it all go?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, it goes to Uncle Sam.
So again, like I think, and they would never do this because, in my opinion, they want most students to get into colleges where colleges most of the time have a certain type of mindset, and it's a certain type of mindset of that they want people to have, right? Because I think a lot of politicians wouldn't fund colleges if they came out and they were all people that were in the opposite party of them. Right, like if you had colleges that were all conservative, like 80-90% of the colleges were, had 80 or 90% conservative college professors, you'd probably see liberals or Democrats being like, hey, we're not going to fund colleges, don't go to college, go
They
get
get treated like veterans.
yeah, go get a blue collar job, right? So again, now what it is hey, listen, if we can if we can help these people go to these places and maybe come to our side of thinking on the political thing, we can just pay these things off. And then what we'll also do is other people will think we'll pay it off, and maybe we will, and we'll just get more votes because it's not our money, it's the taxpayers' money. And we're just using the taxpayers' money to keep ourselves in a position of power, which is, like I said, it's infuriating. But if they had any desire to fix the problem, they would do two things. They would get out of the student loan business or make it a lot different. And the other thing they would do is they'd have the sit down piece of paper mandatory that you have to sit there and it breaks it down for you. I tell kids all the time, my kids, their friends, I've had these discussions over the years with kids, and I'm like, where are you going to college? I want to go here. I go, why don't you do 2 years of community college and then go to the 4-year one for 2 years? And save yourself a ton of money. But the problem is they get into these kids' head that you need to go to a 4-year college and you need to go to this big name school and that's going to do everything. But most people know that unless you go to an Ivy League school, your college and where you went only affects your first job out of college. After that, it's your experience and what the hell you can do. Because all they say is you have a degree, I have a degree, good. Unless you went to Harvard, Stanford, some Ivy League school, they don't care. So let's finish this up and we can. Oops. There we go.
PSLF application is in limbo. Megan Hollis is now dealing with an unexpected twist. A notice in the mail stating that she was ineligible for the program.
Paid my minimum payment so that as much as possible can be forgiven. But that's meant that with interest, I've actually, as of today, owe more than I did when I left medical school.
But Hollis is disputing the rejection, saying she's confident she is eligible and still hoping to see a zero balance on her federal student loan payments. And if that moment happens...
Tears, lots of champagne and cheers.
Oh my gosh. So there's a couple things that I heard with that. And again, like, she states that when she graduated, some of her people that she went to college with went to do their job in these critical fields or these fields that paid a lot more money, and she wanted to do community health. That's noble. But she also knew by doing community health, she wasn't going to make the money necessary to fund her life and to pay back her bills. So sometimes, unfortunately, we have to put our, big pants on. Everyone has to put their big pants on and say, hey, you know what? Maybe what I'll do is out of college, I will suck it up for a couple years. Okay? And what I'll do is I'll go to a job where I can make some money, where I can get ahead. And then what I'll do is go do what I want to do. So what you have here is you have a person like, I want to do this because I want to feel good about myself, but I don't want to have to pay for my decisions. And it just blows my mind. And then the best thing about it is, hey, if they pay off your $100,000 in bills, what are you going to do? I'm going to go do stupid things like buy champagne, and I'll probably go buy a nice car and all this other. That's not what that was supposed to be for. That's supposed to help you out. So there's like 14 seconds left, and then
Megan Hollis told us she has classmates who went into specialized fields who were able to pay down their debt while she is still drowning. But she believes her work in community health is critical, and she's hoping it's valued by the government with loan forgiveness.
Listen, there's a lot of people with critical jobs. There's a lot of people, and I'll tell you what, like, you'll deal with them when you need them. Middle of summer, 98 degrees. You know who has a critical job? The guy that's coming to fix your AC. Your car's broken down. You need to get to work for a job interview or something, or you need to be somewhere the next day. You know who's critical? The mechanic.
Yeah.
Everyone has critical jobs, but the problem is we shouldn't have to fund or we shouldn't have to reimburse your loans because you're making bad decisions.
How do you like go to the grocery store and let's say, you go to this prestigious school, you get this benefit, you get your student loan paid for by the taxpayer. You go to the grocery store, there's this guy that's pushing grocery carts outside in the freezing cold, and he's the one that's essentially paying off your student loan bill. I'm like, how do you look people like that in the eye and say like, I deserve this, when the people that are working in some of like the most laborious jobs are the ones that end up paying the bill on this.
Well, that's the thing is, right? That's why I brought up the mechanic. That's why I brought up the HVAC guy. You got plumbers, construction workers. You have all these people out there fighting every day, struggling every day. Some people are doing things they don't want to do. A lot of people are doing things they don't want to do. But they're not asking other people to, hey, I want to do what I want to do. So I took out these bunch of loans. So can you like pay for them for me? And then I'm going to go get champagne and a nice house and all this because I'm a doctor. I mean, how do you, or better yet, I'm entitled as a CEO and a lawyer to have my student loans paid off. And again, so I have up on the screen, and so the people listening on Spotify. So for that legal aid society that lady works for, and again, this is from 2019. The attorney and chief CEO of that had a 35-hour work week. That's what it said. It said average 35 hours. Reportable compensation was $231,000, and then other compensation was $50,000. Now that's not for the same person. But I'm sure that it didn't go down. If anything, it's gone up. So you're talking $280,000 someone's being paid, and they believe they're entitled, that other people have to pay off their loans. And our government sits there and like, sure. Sure. All the while you have these people that, a barber, talk about a barber, right? A barber cuts your hair and they make decent money. What loans do they have? Why should he have to pay for it? There's so many things you could think about. These people struggling. You have these people working, and I never look down on anyone that's out working. Like I always tell my kids, I'm like, listen, anyone that's out there working, I don't care how old they are, if they're serving you at McDonald's, if they're at Walmart, no matter where you are, they're working. Respect that. Respect that. Because I'm sure you might think in your head, like, I would never want to do that at 28 or 29. Well, I hope maybe you have a better job. But the bigger thing is if you need to work to provide for your family and pay your bills and do what you're supposed to and be a responsible citizen, I would hope you would do that. What I wouldn't hope you would do is sit there and be like, hey, listen, I've made a bunch of bad decisions and everyone else should pay for it. And I think that's what we do. We're setting these people up. And again, I think one of these things they love talking about is another thing is like, hey, vote for us and we'll pay off your bad decisions. We got to stop. Like we got to stop. We got to stop letting politicians use the purse strings to stay in power.
And we'll give you a nice deal on your mortgage too, like we talked about last
Oh
week.
yeah, no, they're gonna penalize you if you're doing it right.
Yeah.
But again, if you do it wrong, they're gonna help you out with that. And again, I think the problem is, I understand the thought process behind a lot of these programs. I really do. The implementation sucks because what ends up happening is you're rewarding bad behavior. We have to stop rewarding bad behavior. We have to start rewarding good behavior. Now, again, one aspect of this thing I kind of like, well, if you made payments for 10 years, then we'll help you. So that kind of rewards people to pay it. But how about like this? How about, listen, if it's a federal loan, if you pay for 10 years, we'll kick off all the interest, but you still have to pay us the principal. I could get behind that compromise. You're being responsible. Interest is crazy. Pay the interest for 10 years. If you can do that, all you owe is the principal for the life of the loan, but you still have to pay it back. I could probably get behind that maybe. But just a flat out, nope, goes away, I just can't.
I'm a sucker. I worked through school. I didn't go to on campus housing because I was couldn't afford it. I just got like a cheap $400 a month bedroom apartment.
Wait, you made good decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like,
You sacrificed?
I guess I made the wrong decisions apparently.
Yeah, no, listen, we joined the military to help. I went community college. I went to school part-time. I paid out of pocket. I put myself through college, and and it took me longer. It took me 6 years. But when I left college, I had no debt. I worked 2 or 3 or 4 jobs, went to school part-time. I struggled. And then what you have, and I'm nothing special, trust me. I'm nothing special. There's a lot of people out there doing the same thing I did. There's people out there with families doing that. But what a slap in the face to everyone that sacrificed and struggled to do the right thing, for other people to sit there and like, I'm entitled to this. No, you're entitled to have to deal with the decisions you made. Anything else?
No, it's great point. I mean, I think to your point earlier, I mean, every job is important, and if you do the right things, really with any job, if you put in the hard work and you save your money, I mean, you can stretch in ways that like people that, I mean, look at these reports now. People making over $100,000 in the cities is the equivalent of like making $30,000 somewhere in the suburbs somewhere. So or like somewhere more rural. So yeah, again, if you are smart and if you just are do the right things, you can do a lot more than someone that does something different. That's a higher paying job, but is like makes bad decisions with that.
Yeah. Well, again, Jim, thank you very much for co-hosting with me. Thanks to everyone for watching and listening, and tune in next week, hopefully for another great show. Thanks again.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.